Okay. And the closed captioning is on.
Okay, oh, that's great. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Charter Study Commission. And at this point, we'd like to call the meeting to order. So we'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance.
I'm getting there.
Okay. You can wait.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One
one
nation,
nation, under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So I'm going to read the Open Public Meetings Act notice. This meeting is being held in accordance with the public laws of 1975, Chapter 231. An adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a notice sent to the Asbury Park Press, Two River Times, and Star Ledger, and posted in the main lobby of the municipal building and on the municipal website. I'm also going to share the duties of the Charter Study Commission. According to NJSA 4069A-7, the duties of the Charter Commission. It shall be the function and duty of the Charter Commission to study the forms of government of the municipality, to compare it with other available forms under the law of this state, to determine whether in its judgment, the government of the municipality could be strengthened, made more clearly responsive or accountable to the people, or whether its operation could be more economical or efficient under changed form of government. Okay, thank you. Okay, time for the roll call.
Nancy Facey Blackwood,
Present?
Mark Taylor, Michael Dupont,
Here.
Ben Forrest,
Present.
Kate Oakson.
Present.
We have two sets of minutes to approve. And is there a motion to approve the minutes of February 2nd and February 15th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
You? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Nope. Okay, great. We have no resolutions and we do have a presentation. Oh, Mark just joined. So we should note that for the record.
Yep.
Okay.
Hello, Commissioner Taylor.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Doing well, guys. Thanks.
Great. So we have a presentation tonight on the alternate forms of government that are available to Red Bank. And our presenter tonight is Ed Sasdelli, who's the Municipal Technical Advisor at DCA. And he's right here. So Ed, the show is yours. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, good evening, commissioners. Let me, I guess the best way to do this is share my screen.
Yes.
So let's see how that works. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yes.
So you know this part. So good evening, as I said, and you know I'm from DCA. We can skip that part. I'm from the Local Assistance Bureau. I know your guys' time is valuable, so I'm going to jump right into it. And if you have any questions at all as I'm going along, we'll just field them. Questions from the commissioners, I'll field those. I'm not going to cover the phase one because I covered that the last time I was here, and I read your agendas and your minutes and the Two River Times, and I think that horse is dead. I think you guys have a great understanding of the borough form of government and your phase one. So I'm going to focus tonight on transitioning to the phase two and reviewing the alternatives. As far as an overview of what I'm going to cover today, a little bit of intro and background. Phase two, we'll get into the alternative forms available under the Faulkner Act. I'm going to go into similarities and differences, and then I'm going to end with what are the next steps. I put open forum for questions at the end, but really this is for you guys, commissioners. So you can ask questions anytime you want. You don't have to wait till the end. I did this last time, but just because if there's new folks that are joining, when I go to these things, I always like to know who's preaching to me. So I'll just tell you a little bit about who I am. I have a master's in public administration. I was a military officer. for 7 years. I was a captain on active duty in the Air Force. Then I was a municipal manager for 20 years, from 91 to 2011, in 3 different New Jersey municipalities. I was a business administrator and a municipal manager, a city manager. And in 2011, I joined the state DCA as a state monitor. This isn't my regular job doing these presentations. This is an additional duty. My regular job is I'm a state monitor. So cities that are under state supervision get assigned a monitor. And I've been a monitor in Atlantic City, Asbury Park, Salem, and Penns Grove. And I have some certifications. The monitor part will come into play in a little bit. So on this next slide, I added this slide because I thought it might be germane to what we're talking about. These are the forms of over here. Hopefully you can see my cursor. Over here, these are the forms of government that I either worked in as a business administrator or city manager, or I was the state monitor overseeing all these forms of government. So I have experience in all these forms of government. I broke them down this way when I put authority. Where does, because obviously one of the key people, administrative people in these positions is the business administrator. So where does the authority come from for the business administrator? In these forms of government, the authority comes from a municipal ordinance.
Ed, can I ask a question about that slide?
Yes, of course.
Now, the line in the middle denotes ones that you've worked in under it. Is that how I take it?
I've worked in all of these. The line denotes the forms of government where the municipal manager gets his authority from the statute, as opposed to a local municipal ordinance that can be changed.
Okay, all right.
That's
Thank you.
That's why I put the line there.
Thank you.
Because you guys have done that. You've changed your BA ordinance a couple of times. And then if you care, those are the names of the towns. But I have experience in all these forms of government. So if questions come up about it, I just wanted you to know that I have some experience, not only academically in a cubicle in Trenton, but I've worked in these forms. This slide doesn't tell you anything you already don't know, but the population is significant because it's going to knock out one of the available forms of government because you're over 12,000. The other thing I want to say, just as like an introduction, I'm a big believer that you have to pick the right form of government, and a right form of government is important, but it is not a substitute for hiring the right people and electing the right people. If the voters have a responsibility to elect the right people, the elected officials have a responsibility to hire the right people. You are who you hire, and it's important that you hire competent, qualified, experienced people to run the complicated business of government. So, and that's regardless of any form, whether you stay with the form you have or whether you pick a new form. You could have the best form in the state. If you don't have the right people in there, it's not going to work. I just want to go over why DCA is here. Like, you don't, I said this before and I'm going to say it again, you don't need DCA approval. I'm not going to put my thumb on the scale. We're only here to give technical assistance. You guys passed a ballot question, a referendum, almost 70-30 to have a charter study commission. The commission asked for technical assistance. That's what I'm here to give. I'll try to distinguish as best I can when I'm giving you fact and when I'm giving you my opinion. And you can check me on that if you don't think I'm doing that accurately enough. But that's what I'm here to do, is to give you technical information and give you some color so you can make the best decision for Red Bank.
Mr. Sasdelli, can I ask another question?
Yeah, of course. Please call me.
Am I assuming correctly that we will have a copy of this? Or already have a copy of this?
I will send it to your chairman and your solicitor and your secretary, and you'll have it.
Thank you.
Yes, you'll have it. The short answer is yes, you get it. New Jersey has 12 forms of government. I talked about that last time. And as I've said, don't worry, we're not going to go through all of them. We don't need to. Red Bank, as you well know from your phase 1, is a borough form. You've been borough form since you were incorporated. You've been nothing else. So here's the slide of just to give you a flavor for what the 564 municipalities are in New Jersey. And I know you guys are really sharp, and somebody's going to check me on this slide, because the last one said 565 municipalities. Pine Hill and Pine Valley combined into one. So there's now 564 municipalities. But this just gives you a flavor for where the other municipalities are. Now, when you look at I'm going to use these terms interchangeably. OMCL stands for Optional Municipal Charter Law. It's what is commonly known as the Faulkner Act. So when you look at the Faulkner Act forms, which are the forms that we're going to discuss tonight as your alternate forms, and this also answers one of the questions that one of the commissioners asked me at the last meeting. Of the towns who switched or changed their form of government, what did they change to? This is what they changed to. And we're going to go over these more in depth. Most common is mayor council, second most common is council manager. So before we get into alternative forms, all of the Faulkner Act forms have these terms in common. So I figured let's define these terms, we throw them around, let's make sure we're all talking about the same thing. So you'll hear partisan versus nonpartisan elections. Well, what does that mean? So in partisan elections, which is what you guys have now in your borough form, candidates run with a party affiliation. You have a primary election in June, you have a general election in November, and you're on the ballot with a party affiliation, not a slogan. You're familiar with that. So the nonpartisan form, if you were to switch to a nonpartisan form, there's the statutory reference if you want to read more about it. Candidates do not run with a party affiliation. You can't run with a party affiliation. There's no primary election. The general election can be in May or November. Candidates are on the ballot with a slogan. The statute says the slogan can't exceed 6 words, and it cannot identify your party affiliation. Over here in the blue highlighted circle, I just pulled a few real life, real world slogans that I've seen from other nonpartisan ballots. Focused on the future, choose forward, strong and free, fighting for families. That's what you would run on as far as your literature and the ballot, the printed ballot. The other terms we throw around in Faulkner Act are INR, which stands for initiative and referendum. So let's talk about what those are, and then you'll hear me say INR in other parts of the presentation. Both of these give the voters more power than the traditional forms of government that don't have INR. The first one, initiative, it's a way for the citizens to put measures on the ballot. If they get the proper number of signatures, they can put something on the ballot, even if the governing body opposes it. Citizens can put it on there. It's a high bar. They have to get a bunch of signatures, but they can do it. That's the initiative part. The referendum part, citizens can reject an ordinance that's been approved by the governing body. So even if the governing body introduces an ordinance, advertises it, holds a public hearing, takes an adoption vote and adopts it, it can be suspended if by the citizenry, if they get the proper number of signatures and present it to the clerk. So that's the.
I have a quick question. When you say voters can suspend that ordinance with 15% of the petitions in the total votes cast in the last election, is that with someone actually circulating a petition and bringing it in to the municipal clerk, or is there a formal process for that? Just out of curiosity.
There is a form. Again, I'm not going to practice law. You have somebody here that practices law, but there is a formal process, and it does entail people going around with the petition and getting signatures.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mike, do you want to add any color to that?
Sure. I guess the only thing I notice is, traditionally it's always, people going around with, clipboards, just like a nominating petition for office. Some people did become accustomed to the online signatures that the governor allowed for by executive order during the pandemic. But those executive orders have lifted. So it kind of reverts to the original system, which, is pen and paper and getting signatures the old fashioned way.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Sasdelli, this has been Commissioner Forrest. Is this an option in certain governments, or is it like if you pick council manager, this is required, or does it, you're going to go through and explain that? I'm also interested in knowing what percentage of the voters vote on the initiatives.
I don't know the second part of your question. The first part of your question is you can't elect not to have INR. If you choose one of the Faulkner Act forms, you get this.
Automatically, okay.
Yes, you get it
So
automatically.
if we stayed where we are, it would not be there.
You don't have it now, and you wouldn't have it.
All right, but if we change to any of all the Faulkner Act governments,
Yes.
INR comes with it.
Yes.
Is there any control over the percentage of, hopefully it's more than like 10 signatures to, change an ordinance. I mean, do we have any control of that? Is it just a formula? And if it is a formula, what is it?
It's statutory. I'm gonna let Mike give the color, but it's statutory. It's 15% of the total votes cast in the last election where General Assembly candidates were running.
Okay,
Is that close, Mike?
Yeah, I'm pulling up the statute. Most state statutes are pegged to an assembly race. So obviously in cycles where the governor is up, you typically have slightly higher turnout than when just the legislature's up, but those are based on the odd number years. And so the thresholds are set in the state election arena, not the federal election arena.
and this is the total votes cast in the borough,
Mhm. The
Correct.
municipal election.
in the municipality. Okay.
So at some point, I'd like to know what that number would be, for example, if we have that now. That's all.
Yeah, I could certainly look up for you and we could work.
Doesn't
with the
have to
clerk's
be right
office.
now.
Yeah, I'm curious myself, so I'll look it up while we're chatting here. And if I get something, I'll let you guys know.
And would that be the same for initiatives as well? The
Mhm.
same 15%? Okay,
Yes, I didn't list it in there, but it's the same in both statutes,
okay, great.
15%.
At some point also, it might not be a bad idea. I don't know if you can talk about this with Mr. Marcel. I don't know if I'm saying your name correctly, Ed.
Go on, Ed. It's fine.
If we had testimony about how well INR has worked around the state, around, various issues, I'd be interested in hearing that. I'm just sort of putting that out there because we don't have it in Red Bank. So we have, I know it's in Asbury. So that's all.
It's not easy to get 15% of the total votes cast in the last General Assembly election. It's a relatively high bar. It sounds low, but in practice, it doesn't happen that often.
Thank you.
But I don't have any statistics for you.
Thank you.
We good? Everybody good?
Yeah, we're good.
So we're going to talk about phase two. We're going to jump right into phase two, the alternate forms of government. And I have two circles on this chart. The Faulkner Act forms are the forms I'm going to mainly focus on. I circled those in green. We're going to talk about those. Those are permitted by law, and that's an administrative process to do that. Special charters, I put a red dotted line about. One of the commissioners asked me about that at the last meeting. It is technically permitted, a special charter. Practically, I'm going to cover that in the next slide. Practically, I don't think that's an option. That's my opinion. Legally, it is an option, but I think when you look at the slide, you'll see. So the statute allows for special charters. There's two types of special charters in New Jersey. The first one is an orphan charter issued prior to 1947. You're not that, so that doesn't apply to you. The second one would be a special charter issued by the state legislature. Since they made that law in 1947, there's no classification of special charters. There's only 11 of them. The last one was issued 37 years ago in 1985, Hardyston. It requires enabling legislation from both chambers, the Assembly and the Senate. And I put this in green because, again, it's my opinion. I don't think that's a practical option. I don't think, I've been with the department for 12 years. I don't think there's any appetite for special charters. And the ones that are there, they comport with the optional municipal charter law anyway. They comport with the Faulkner Act. The legislature is not going to let somebody go way, way askew. Even the ones that, even these 11, they retained some of their traditional form and then pulled in some of the optional municipal charter forms. Like maybe they pulled in INR, maybe they pulled in a city manager, but it didn't go way off. So I think you would spend a lot of energy on something that would have a very low probability of happening.
Mhm.
So let's focus on the forms that are permitted by law right now and that the commission has the ability to recommend and just move forward with. And they would be the Faulkner Act forms. So I put an X through small municipalities. You guys know, I already alluded to that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide because it doesn't apply to you. It's available only to municipalities under 12,000. You're not under 12,000. So I won't waste the commission's time, but I put a slide there if you want to look at it on your own. So if you take that one out, then there's 3 forms left that are available to the commissioners for consideration. That's the mayor council, the council manager, and the mayor council administrator. which, as you can see, there's only 3 municipalities that have that. So I'm going to talk about that one first, because just kind of to get it off the table. Not that it's not an option, but it's not much different from what you already have. You'll see when you look at the slide, the mayor, council, administrator form. There's the statute. There's only 3 municipalities: Berkeley Heights, West Milford, North Brunswick. It's basically the borough form of government with a mandated administrator. And you guys have a borough form of government with an ordinance administrator. So it's not that different. It's the same as you have now: 7 council people. They're elected at large in partisan elections. You can't have a nonpartisan form with mayor, council, administrator. They directly elect the mayor. Council serves a 3-year term, just like it is now. There's an election every year. This is continuing with mayor, council, administrator. 8 through 13 is the same as you have now. 14 is different. The administrator, the statute requires an administrator, and it says that the administrator administers the business affairs of the municipality. And to Commissioner Forrest's question, the voters it does add INR. So, for example, if you wanted to keep your current form of government and you wanted to have INR, you could pick mayor, council, administrator. It would mandate an administrator. It would give you INR, but it wouldn't give you the nonpartisan. It wouldn't give you the nonpartisan ability.
Can I just jump in real quick? On 14, is there any other framework for the administrator's role, either statutorily, or is it created somehow by the council? Like, I know it's by statute that you have an administrator and they can't be removed like you can with the borough form, but how do you define the role of the administrator in this form of government?
Yes, that's a great question. And the statute is notoriously silent on that. This is basically what the statute says. Administers the business affairs of the municipality. So I did some work in Berkeley Heights to help them, because that same question, Commissioner, came up with the Berkeley Heights mayor and council. So they have a municipal, all of these towns have a municipal ordinance that elaborates on what they want their administrator to do. So in actuality, although the statute mandates an administrator, the local ordinance will dictate what authority that administrator has.
And of course, that ordinance is subject to change based on the whims of the then sitting council, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
So in summary, I know I raced through this one, but we'll take as much time as you need. In summary, it's a borough form with a mandated administrator, although the statute is pretty silent on exactly what the administrator would do. There's an election every year. They are partisan. It does include INR, and it's only used by 3 municipalities. And I said I wasn't going to put my thumb on the scale, and I'm not, but I think the fact that it's only used by 3 municipalities speaks for itself. Okay, so we've got small municipality off the table. We talked about mayor, council, administrator. We'll spend the bulk of our time on of the towns who switch. Most of them switch to mayor, council, or council manager. So we want to have a good understanding of what that is. This came out blurry for some reason, but I'll start with mayor, council first. And I didn't do this chart. This came from the Encyclopedia of American Politics. I just thought it was interesting. These are municipal governments in the United States. Although mayor council is the most common of the Faulkner Act forms in New Jersey, it was the second most common in the United States. And I just thought that was a neat chart to look at. I hadn't seen that before. So let's talk about the mayor council form of government. So this is the government that you hear when you go to the league or you go to a seminar and they say, oh, it's a strong mayor form of government. Well, this is the one. This is a strong mayor form. So there's pros and cons. I guess depends on whether you're mayor or not. But so the mayor is directly elected. It's designed for the mayor to be independent of council and in charge of the administration. The mayor has the right to speak at council meetings, but he has no vote, he or she. I'll say he, but I mean he or she. The mayor has the right to speak at council meetings, has no vote, does not need to attend meetings, and does not sit on the dais. Most of the mayors do not go to the meetings in this form of government. It's just the council. The mayor does have veto power. He can veto an ordinance. The council in the mayor-council form of government consists of 5, 7, or 9 members. They're elected at large or from wards. They're limited to legislative functions only. There's no executive or administrative authority. I put an asterisk there because I'm going to expand on that in the next slide. The council can reduce items in the mayor's budget. The way it works in this form of government is the mayor presents a budget to council, and then the council, or the mayor cannot impose a budget. He presents a budget to council. Council can reduce a line item in the mayor's budget with a majority vote, or they can increase a line item in the mayor's budget, but it takes a 2/3 vote to increase it. The theory there is if you're going to increase a line item, you've either got to cut something else or you've got to raise the tax rate. So that's why it's a higher bar if you want to increase something in the mayor's budget. And the mayor can, the council can override a mayor veto with a 2/3 vote. So let's talk about this asterisk, limited to legislative functions only. So there's no executive or administrative authority. The statute is very clear. This isn't an ordinance. This is a statute. You'll recognize the number. So I'm not going to read a lot of slides, but I want to read this one to you. The municipal council shall deal with employees solely through the mayor or his designee. All contact with employees and all actions and communications concerning the administration of government shall be through the mayor or his designee. It's almost always the BA is the designee, but it doesn't have to be. But my experience has been the mayor normally designates that to the BA. So the statute is very specific about that.
Can I just interject real quick? How is the designee appointed? Is it formalized in writing at the beginning of the year? Can it be changed on a whim? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how much control, if, you know, the mayor gets upset with the BA for doing something, can he change the designee?
Yes.
In the year?
Yes, the answer is the mayor designates it just with the stroke of a pen. It doesn't require any legislative action. The mayor's not a legislator in this form of government. The mayor just does it with a letter, and he can issue it and he can rescind it the next day, issue it the day after and rescind it the next day. And, you know, it's a strong mayor form of government. It's good to be king.
Yeah. But based on the statute, the mayor couldn't designate a council person to be his designee.
No.
Okay.
No, I'll defer that for Mike to research. I don't think that, because I don't think the mayor can do that.
Okay.
I think by statute, when you read the BA part of the statute requires a BA. I think it says it's the BA if it's not the mayor. Forrest, Commissioner Forrest.
You said something interesting, because I actually have gone to a lot of Long Branch municipal meetings, which I believe is, quote, strong mayor form of government. And the mayor did attend generally the meetings, although when they were having troubles, you know, the council was arguing with the mayor. Sometimes the mayor wouldn't show up for a while. It does seem kind of strange and bizarre to me. Maybe it's because I go to our council meetings and I go to other towns. You know, usually a mayor is always present to be familiar with people, because the council meeting is not just about deliberating as far as the council and the officers go. You know, the citizens and residents come to the meetings and, you know, talk about what's on their mind and what problems they're having. And it does, and I'm just going to ask you, well, you probably already guessed what I'm going to ask you. It troubles me a little bit that the idea that a mayor, you know, could just say, frig it, I'm not going to bother attending the meetings. I mean, does it work that way, or does the mayor have to have some kind of way for direct input from the citizens in that form of government?
Well, yeah, you have to remember, and I covered some of this at the last meeting, but it's that separation of powers, that the legislative and the executive. So in this form of government, the mayor is the executive. He's not a legislator. So I don't have experience in all the towns, but the ones that I was in, Atlantic City, Camden, Trenton, the mayor is not on council. He's not on the dais, and he doesn't come to the meetings. The council president sets the agenda and runs the meeting. And if people want to see the mayor, they're usually full-time mayors. Often they're full-time. They have office hours. They have an office, and people can come in and meet the mayor or the BA. But it's been my experience, and maybe you'll interview people from that form that'll tell you different, but it's been my experience that they often don't show up. And they certainly, even if they show up, they sit in the audience.
So as far as public input on the mayor there, theoretically, if you had a mayor who didn't really want to listen to anybody, they could kind of hide in their office and not really have much exposure to the public except what they choose. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know if I am okay with the premise of your question. I mean, the mayor's elected at large, so he
Right.
has a constituency. He's got to be responsive to them in some way. If it's not going to be at council meetings, which is really the council president's and the council's meeting. It's not the mayor's meeting. The mayor can have town meetings. The mayor can have meet the mayor night. The mayor can have, open door on Monday evenings. I've seen all of that. But the council meeting is the council meeting, and it's not the mayor's show. And the council is very proprietary about that.
Okay.
I have a question. So the council at this point would just stick to the legislative functions. But what if there is public input and people want to say, my roads are not being paved on time and stuff that normally a BA would be involved? Is the BA required, or the designee required, to attend these meetings to help address resident concerns?
Normally, the BA is at the meetings.
Okay.
Yeah, normally the BA is at the meetings, gives a report, represents the administration, takes notes, follows up on issues. Yes,
Okay.
because we're jumping ahead a little bit, but this is a good point to make here. The business administrator, although he's appointed by the mayor, can be removed by 2/3 of council. So BAs may be a lot of things, but they're not stupid. They know how they can be removed. So they have to make sure that so they do go to the meetings and they listen to council concerns, and to the extent that they can, they try to be responsive to council, because again, they're appointed by the mayor, they're confirmed by council, and they can be removed by a 2/3 vote of council. So the BAs try to work with council and be the liaison between council and the mayor.
Mhm.
And if I could just make one quick remark, I think an analogy that might give people some perspective on mayor council is, thinking of your state or your federal government and, the relationship between the legislature and the governor. The legislature has, its legislative sessions, and the governor has no obligation and doesn't go unless, he's invited for the state of the state. So I think it's kind of a similar here where, the council is its own body, and it, has its ability and its stature to act on its own, independent of the mayor.
They're very territorial about that. I just did a training seminar in East Orange, and I assumed all the governing body was there, but the mayor wasn't invited. It's just the council. The council was very territorial. I just did a thing in Camden. It was for the council. It's the council's meeting. So that's the one meeting. So in this form of government, for some reason, it's very territorial that way. And the mayor tries to respect that. It's not that the mayor is ignoring the public. He tries to respect that it's the council's business. It's the council's time.
Ed, if I can ask you a question, that territorial, though, does that result in malaise for the borough government?
It could, but that's why the BA is a key role, to be that bridge, because there's a check and balance. The council knows that they got to have communication with the mayor, or everything they pass is going to get vetoed by the mayor. The mayor knows that he's got to have some cooperation with the council, because the mayor in this form of government cannot introduce a resolution, cannot introduce an ordinance, can't put anything on an agenda. He's not a legislator. So if he wants any initiatives to see the light of day, he's got to have a relationship with council, or it's not even going to get on an agenda, let alone a motion and a second.
Yeah,
So,
I think that in our surrounding areas, Tinton Falls has this form of government. All right, thanks. Sorry.
that's okay. It's quite different than the borough council form of government, where the mayor sits, at the council meeting and runs the meeting.
So I haven't, and I may be addressing this later, and it's okay to put it off, but here's another. If you have a mayor who gets elected that is really not cut out to be mayor, and voters make mistakes sometimes, is there a system for, does the recall initiative part of this come into play here, where if enough people don't like a mayor, theoretically, you can have a recall and a redo on the election? Is that, I don't know, I'm asking.
I'm going to defer to Mike on this. My recollection is you have to wait a year, and after a year, I think they are subject to recall. But
I believe all state office holders are under a 1990s constitutional amendment, but the threshold is 25% of all registered voters, which is incredibly high. So typically, it was put on the ballot and the people approved it, but very rarely is it effectuated, because basically 1 in 4 people would need to sign it. It may actually be one out of four population wise. So it's a very high threshold. But since you gave me that opening, I did want to let you know, Commissioner Forrest, I looked it up, and the last Red Bank election this past November, 5,214 votes were cast. So under the 15% threshold, that comes out to 782.1. So 783 signatures would be required for an initiative or referendum based upon the results of the last election.
And Commissioner Forrest, my one experience with that recall is when I was the monitor in Atlantic City, they tried to recall the mayor twice. They had to wait a year, first of all, and then they tried twice to do it and never came close to getting the signatures to do it.
Because you need 25% of the electorate.
I don't know that off the top of my head.
All right, because that's a pretty staggering number if that's it. I hope it, you know. So basically, if that's really the case, you can't remove the mayor once they're elected at all.
It's hard. It's hard.
Okay, you answered my question. Thank you.
So we're in the mayor council form of government. We talked a little bit about the mayor. We talked a little bit about the council, the very distinct line between executive and legislative functions. So if you choose the mayor council form of government, you can choose wards. They're not required, but you have the option of choosing wards. If you choose wards, this is right from the statute book. You'll see this slide twice. It's in the other form too. But if you have wards, you have to follow the statute. So let's take the easy example. If you want 7 council members and you want wards, you got to have 4 wards. And then you would have 4 from wards and 3 at large. I don't know that Red Bank is large enough to have wards, but that's your guys' call. But that is an option. So when we look at these functions that I was talking about, the summary of the roles. So the executive function is the mayor, the legislative function is the council, and the administrative function is the business administrator. So the other considerations with the mayor council form of government. So elections can be partisan or nonpartisan. So if you choose this form, you're going to have a lot of choices underneath, and I'm going to have a wrap-up slide at the end, but just stay with me here. So the other considerations, that you can have partisan or nonpartisan. You can have at-large or wards. I already said that. And strangely enough, you can have the terms be concurrent or staggered. Like you said, why would you want it to be concurrent? Well, for example, the city of Vineland in Cumberland County has mayor council form of government. They have 6 council people. They're all elected in the same election for 4-year terms. So it's conceivable, and it's happened in Vineland, where you could have 6 brand new people with no experience all getting sworn in at the same time. So their elections are concurrent. You take the other example, which would be a Perth Amboy. They have also 6 council people, and they have staggered terms. So they have an election every 2 years. Mayor and 2 council people run at the same time. The other 3 council run 2 years later. So that's your concurrent versus your staggered. And I kind of brought this up on the other slide, but the mayor has no formal role to play at meetings and frequently does not attend. Council president controls the meeting and the meeting agenda, which is an important power. I like the example that the attorney used about, imagine what Nancy Pelosi would say if somebody tried to stroll in and change, set her agenda at the meeting. You know, that's kind of how the council presidents feel in this form of government. The mayor is not a legislator. He or she cannot introduce resolutions or ordinances or place things on the agenda. So that kind of forces some cooperation with the mayor and council members.
I have a question. Traditionally, in the board form of government, the mayor makes appointments to boards and commissions. So in this form of government, who would make those appointments? It sounds like it would be council, yeah?
The mayor would make the appointments and council would have to confirm that.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, but in the mayor and the borough form of government, the mayor doesn't make all the appointments.
Not all, but some, right?
The mayor makes the appointment. The only appointments available for the mayor and the borough form of government is the planning board. The rest
Yeah.
are all advice and consent.
Yeah, the municipal land use law
Except for
specifically
except for
gives the
zoning.
mayor those powers of appointment. And the one unique thing about the council manager form is it actually divests the mayor of that power and it rests with council.
Yeah,
But otherwise,
we haven't got to that, right? Right.
yeah, we're getting
No.
ahead of ourselves.
Mayor and
But
Mr. Sasdelli, I just wanted to ask a quick question about wards. However, if you're going to be repeating wards, I can hold my question till later on.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So you kind of qualified that statement with you don't think we're large enough. And, one of the things that I've heard from residents who are communicating with us about, potential this phase and looking at other forms of government is the idea of wards. And I think that there is some local thinking, that we live in neighborhoods and neighborhoods translate as wards. And I'd like to hear a little bit about your idea about size impacting this idea of ward and the notion of ward and neighborhood.
So Atlantic City has wards, Salem has wards. I work in both those towns. It's a plus and a minus. The people that are elected from those wards are very sensitive to the constituents in those wards. And that works great when the constituents' interest in that ward is also the interest of the city. But sometimes the interest of a particular ward may not be in the best interest of the city. So, and that's just politics with a small p. Sometimes that happens. Somebody's advocating for something to happen in their ward, which is good for their ward, but may not be good for the rest of the city. So that's the only negative that I really see about wards, is that people get very focused on their ward and they don't look at the best interest of the city at large. And that's just a decision for you guys to make. But it's certainly like, if you have a big city like big meaning spread out like Atlantic City, it makes some sense to have wards because you got the casinos, you got the high income people, you have low income people, like you have very different constituencies. So they want to have wards because they have very different interests. And I don't know Red Bank well enough to know if you have those kind of sections. And if you do, you can certainly have wards. This form of government and the other form has wards.
And if I can, most wards are not typically the size of Red Bank. Most wards are cities or townships that are, as you said, spread out.
Yeah.
Most mayor council wards are those that are applicable to municipalities that are quite substantial than Red Bank. To the best of my knowledge, I do not know of any mayor council wards at the size of Red Bank, which is approximately 12,000 people.
Yeah, but what is your geographic? Do I have that?
It's 1.6 square miles, 1.7 square miles. So we're not spread out.
Yeah.
And we don't have a large population. So
2 square miles.
you're looking at that size is not entirely accurate, but you don't have a Red Bank that's spread out, and to the detriment, I think you mentioned reference to the detriment of the wards, and that is that there could be a ward that wants something that is good for the ward, but not necessarily good for the city or the borough.
Right. I mean, that happens, but you certainly can have wards. I mean, 2 square miles is small to have. So the minimum number of wards you could have is 2. You could have 2 wards. You could divide the city in half. And that's what ends up happening. You end up pitting wards against other wards. But
that doesn't promote unity and at all for the borough of Red Bank.
I'm not familiar enough with Red Bank to know if you have, very different sectors, villages.
Yeah, but what I guess one of the questions that I'm asking, I don't even mean to interrupt. If you off the top of your head, and I don't believe I'm aware of any, is there a mayor council ward of a municipality that's the size of Red Bank?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I don't know any off the top of my head, but I certainly don't.
Of the 71 towns that use the mayor council form of government, I think it's less than that. I'm sorry, I took the chart away. I don't recall, at least in my diligence, that there are any mayor council wards with a municipality the size of Red Bank.
I don't know. You might be right.
Yeah.
I mean, they tend to be for the larger municipalities,
Right.
geographically larger ones.
Right.
I'm sorry, Ed, I didn't mean to interrupt.
But to Commissioner Ogerson's question, you certainly could have wards. You could have 2 wards, you could have 3 wards, you could have 4 wards. You could do that if you wanted to.
Oh, so we're not mandated to a specific number of wards.
You're mandated by the size of the council. You have to decide the size of your council first, and then that dictates
Okay.
the number of wards.
And then, okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Right. So if you only wanted 2 or 3 wards, you can only have 5 council people. If you want 7 council people, you gotta have 4 wards.
Who,
So that would be chopping up the city into 4 wards.
who's responsible for drawing the map of the wards? We have
Oh.
9 voting districts now.
Good.
How does that get,
Oh my God, you talk about how the sausage gets made.
Yeah.
I'm going to let the solicitor handle that question, because that gets political. You have a board of elections, it gets political.
Yeah, I believe the Board of Elections handles it,
Mhm.
the municipal ward law.
Right. Yeah, the board of elections is going to get involved, and it gets political. I don't know is the answer to the question, but it gets complicated.
Okay.
So
And I would note, for those that aren't familiar, the Board of Elections is a statutory body that's bipartisan, so there's an equal number of Democrats and Republicans who sit on it. And if they don't agree, that there's tie-breaking procedures which typically end up in court. So the theory is both sides need to agree on something, or else they're not able to take an action.
He just had this example in Piscataway, where the Board of Elections approved the ward selected and the increase or decrease of wards. So, you're typically looking at towns that are the size of a Piscataway when you're starting to deal with wards.
Mhm.
And when you have wards, the other point about wards is when you do have a census, then when you have to look at population, you have to see a population moved around. Also, that can change. That we got involved in that in Atlantic City, but I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole. The answer to the question is that is an option. You can have wards.
So I just want to make sure I understand one aspect of this discussion. So
Yeah, go ahead.
essentially, though, we nor the town control how the wards will be drawn, though, under any circumstances. It's
I don't
the
think-
election. It's that body that you mentioned earlier, the Board of Elections.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a county. Isn't that a county?
Yes, it's the county.
Yeah, it's the county board of elections. I think the county board of elections does, but I'm not positive. It's
Okay.
not the municipal council.
I mean, that's
No.
very significant. So it
Yeah.
seems like, even if you had some well-intentioned idea of neighborhoods in town, that necessarily won't have anything to do with the way the political map is ultimately drawn. Okay,
That's correct. What happens, Ben, is that the Board of Elections, which is constituted by Republicans and Democrats, that fight is then in that arena and not in the borough.
okay, I got it. I'm not inclined for wards personally, but I just wanted to make sure that if, we
Well,
have really no control over the way a neighborhood would be drawn with wards anyway. I do have some experience with wards because my mother lived in Hoboken and she ran for office there. But in Hoboken, it seemed like they were somewhat logical, actually. But it doesn't sound like that would necessarily be the case here. We'd have no control and no say over it, which is disturbing too.
Well, and also what Ed said was the census plays a large part also in this too. So, I mean, I'm certainly not in favor of wards, because it takes it out of the hands of the residents of Red Bank, especially in the delineation of the wards.
Oh, yeah, it sounds really like a bad idea. I think my mother's ward in Hoboken was bigger than our town.
Right. The other, again, I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole. I don't know where I left off, but there also tends to be a little bit of tension between the at-large members and the ward members, because the ward members are, they have their constituents, and the at-large members are concerned about the at-large. And, it's sometimes I notice that also, just to add some color to it. It's not everybody's not coming from the exact same spot when they sit on council, when you have wards and at-large people on there. But it works. There's towns that have it, and it works.
So I'm glad you're going over this with us. I mean, this is important. Even if it's not something we necessarily going to choose, it's important to hear it.
Yeah, okay. So again, to wrap this one up, the choices that if you were to choose mayor council, there's a bunch of sub choices you have to choose, even if you choose this form, choose to recommend it. You have to decide whether you want to be partisan or nonpartisan, staggered or concurrent, at large or wards. If you have wards, how many? And of course, you have to decide on the size of council. And you have 5, 7, or 9 you can choose from. Again, I'm going to have this in a wrap-up slide. So that's mayor, council, form of government. A very separated executive and legislative function. So then we go to the council manager form of government, which this is not DCA. We don't have a preference and we don't push a preference. But if you've heard of ICMA, it's the International City and County Management Association. They often have a booth at the League of Municipalities. They give seminars. They do promote the council manager form of government as the preferred structure. And I just noted that on there. If you want to go to their website, they have a ton of literature as to why they think it's good. You can look at that on your own. So in the council manager form of government, you'll see some similarities. I put the statute up there to look at. The governing body is made up of 5, 7, or 9, same numbers. The mayor is part of the governing body. He or she is one of the 5. It's not 5, 7, or 9 plus a mayor. He or she is one of the 5, 7, or 9. The mayor can be directly elected or selected by council. That's one of the choices you have in this form of government. The mayor presides at the council meeting. It's not like mayor council. The mayor presides at the council meeting, whether he's appointed or directly elected, he presides. All the terms are 4 years. The elections can be concurrent or staggered. If they're staggered, it's every 2 years. This slide is the same as the last slide. If you choose wards, you got to follow the same chart that's in the statute for the size of the wards. I think we beat wards to death, so I'll move on. Council manager. So some of the other considerations in council manager. So council, and when we say council in the council manager form of government, that includes the mayor. The mayor is on the legislative body. The mayor is a legislator as part of the council. So in this form of government, and this is by statute, not by ordinance, the council only appoints the manager, the clerk, the assessor, the attorney, and boards and commissions. The council appoints a manager to be the chief executive and carry out the will of the council. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit more on this next slide. So the council appoints a manager to be the chief executive and carry out the will of council. Now, again, I was the city manager in Evesham Township. I served as the city manager, and I've been state monitor in towns that have city manager. There's this misnomer or this myth that the manager is, the dictator and he or she can do whatever. That's not true. The job of the manager is to carry out the will of the council. The manager does have a lot of authority in this form of government, but he or she can only act in accordance with governing body policy. So let me give you some examples. The manager can hire whoever they want. The manager can create positions. The manager can pay people. None of that is true. The manager has to follow the approved budget that council adopts. Mm-hmm. The mayor has to follow the manager has to follow the salary ordinance. Council passes the salary ordinance, which has all the positions and what the salaries are. So yes, once you adopt that, if you adopt an ordinance and it says the CFO makes $85,000, then the manager can go hire a CFO for $85,000. But he or she can't do that if you don't have a salary ordinance that establishes the position, funds the position, and sets the salary. He or she can't award contracts that the governing body hasn't authorized and budgeted for. The manager has to comply with all the ordinances and resolutions. He doesn't decide what roads get paid. Council decides that, but he makes it happen, or she. Same thing with bonding. He can't borrow money or bond money or spend money. So there's a misnomer out there, and I suffered from that when I was a manager, and I always tried to make sure that the council understood that. I wanted.
Ed, if I could, while you're on this and just talking about the manager, what is the criteria to remove the manager?
Right. So I'm going to jump to my next slide because I was going to go right into that. So
before you go, Ed, I have a question on the previous slide you had up.
Sure.
Do you mind?
No, not at all.
When you have here contracts are awarded by the governing body, who would be the person to handle the contracts themselves, to put things out to bid? Would that be the manager? That
No,
would be similar to an administrator ordinance?
It would be the manager's responsibility, but my guess is there would be a QPA, a qualified purchasing agent, or a purchasing agent in the town. But what I mean there by contracts awarded by the governing body is the manager can get all the quotes and RFPs he wants, but he can't award a contract. The
Correct.
council has to do that. But,
Right.
and he would only, to your question, so if the governing body passed a budget and that budget said, we're gonna hire a special counsel for labor relations. Manager, Mr. Manager, put out a RFP for labor counsel. He would do all that legwork, bring it back to council. Council will have to appoint the person or award the contract. Same thing if they were gonna build a park or anything of that nature. So yes, the manager would do the legwork based on direction from the council. The manager couldn't go out and get RFPs for something that's not in the budget. That's not part of an ordinance. That's not part of a resolution.
Mhm. And then the council at this point would have to have an agreement. Say they want to do a park, the council would say, okay, you go ahead and you can act as the researcher for all the information. And then the manager would bring back all the data that says, we had these 5 bids. Here's all the information about the bids. You council make the selection. That's essentially it. Yes?
Yes, and I'm going to combine the answer to that question to the answer to the other commissioner's question about how can the manager be removed by a simple
Yeah.
majority? That is huge. That's why I have it in yellow. And I'm
Yes.
going to jump to here for now because it goes with that question and the one that the Commissioner Dupont asked.
Is the majority include the mayor?
Yes. Yes, it's a majority of council and the mayor is part of council. So the BA is any city manager worth their weight in salt knows that's a low bar. Every other form of government, it's 2/3. So this is a low bar. So every municipal manager knows that any meeting, a majority vote, they can give him 3 months pay and he or she is done. Like they know that. So it's a built-in responsiveness to that. And that bar is low for a reason. So I'm going to tell you a quick war story, and I think it answers the chairwoman's question. So in the government I was in, we had, I'm going to say a ragtag group of long hair and flip-flops come to the microphone and they wanted a skateboard park. Remember back in the 90s when skateboard parks were in? And they wanted a skateboard park. And council said, Ed, could you research, skateboard parks? I came back at the next public meeting as the manager who has a right to speak at all public meetings. I don't have a right to vote, but I had a right to speak and take part in discussions. I gave them 39 reasons why it was a bad idea. Security, neighborhoods, fencing, policing, insurance, all these reasons why it was not a good idea and that we should try to, come up with alternative options. And the council listened, they listened to the public, and the council voted to build a skateboard park. So the Atlantic City Press ran right over to me after the meeting and said, Mr. Manager, what do you have to say about that? I said, we're going to have the best skateboard park in Atlantic County. That was the answer. Because the manager knows where, how it works. So that's how it works. And I feel like there's because of that question that Commissioner Dupont asked about be removed by a simple majority. And that doesn't have to be for cause, just can be removed for simple majority. You give the person 3 months pay and they're done. So again, that's a low bar. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but let's cover these functions that I want to cover. So in this form of government, council manager, which is a little different than the last form, the legislative function is the council, which includes the mayor. The executive and administrative function is performed by the manager, but it has to be under the umbrella of what council has already authorized, either at reorganization or in the budget or in an ordinance. But those functions to implement those things, the manager does that. The manager is the chief executive and he appoints all subordinate personnel. Anybody who wasn't on that list that I showed you, when I was the manager, I appointed the CFO. If we picked up trash the old-fashioned way with trash laborers, if 2 trash laborers quit, I had to hire 2 more trash laborers. I couldn't wait till the next meeting to hire 2 trash laborers. We needed to pick up trash. So the manager has the authority to do that. As long as they're budgeted positions, as long as it's in the salary ordinance, the manager can do that. The manager must attend all council meetings and may take part in discussions, but does not have a vote. And the manager serves at the pleasure of the council and can be removed by a majority. We covered that. So much like these are the only two slides I'm going to read to you. I won't read any more to you, but this is very similar to the other form of government. They say it a little bit differently, but this form of government has the same function. They have an ordinance, a statute that the council acts as a body and they can't interfere. The municipal council shall act in all matters as a body, and it is contrary to the spirit of this article for any of its members to seek individually to influence the official acts of the municipal manager or any other officer, or for the council or any of its members to interfere in any way with the performance of such officers. The council and its members shall deal with the administrative service solely through the manager and shall not give orders to any subordinates of the manager, either publicly or privately. Any council member violating the provision of this section shall be disqualified as a council member. So both forms of government are very specific about legislators not running administration. But at the same token, the manager has a responsibility to do it the way the council wants it done, because they do have authority over the manager. They don't have authority over the department heads, but they have authority over the manager.
And you would think that this would free up the council to be able to be focused on the strategic vision for the town, as well as, just the usual, approving ordinances, or I'm saying resolutions to pay the bills, and, just making sure that we're staying within the municipality is staying within the budget. Yeah.
You're right. And I'll give you one
In
other,
theory.
I'll give you one other quick war story. And I know this is a public meeting, so I'm careful. I'm being careful here, but I'm the state monitor in Salem. And I read Salem the Riot Act at a public meeting recently, because I went there to talk about the budget, and obviously they're under state supervision, so they have budget issues. I went there to talk about the budget. They spent 2 hours talking about bleachers at the football field and 10 minutes talking about the budget. And that goes to your point, is that the council is supposed to discuss the larger issues that affect the municipality and not get bogged down on a bunch of shiny objects. So yes, theoretically, it's supposed to help with that.
Thank you.
So let's look at mayor, council versus council manager. Right? So they have a bunch of things in common. What do they have in common? The mayor can be directly elected in both forms. Obviously, in mayor council, it has to be directly elected. In council manager, it's a choice, but he can be directly elected. They can be partisan or nonpartisan. Both have elections every 2 years, or they can be concurrent. They both include initiative and referendum. Both can be at-large or wards. Both you can have 5, 7, or 9. Both require either a BA or a manager. I'll call that a municipal manager, but they both require a BA or municipal manager. And they both prohibit council interference with employees and administrative staff. So let's look at some differences. Some of these we got into already on the other slides, but I want to go through this a little bit painstakingly, the differences. So let's look at line 1. In mayor council, the mayor is not on council, not a legislator, can't introduce resolutions, can't introduce ordinances, can't even speak unless he's recognized by the council president. In the council manager, the mayor is part of the council and chairs the meeting. In mayor council, the mayor has no legislative duties. We covered that. In the council manager, the mayor has legislative responsibilities. The mayor is a legislator. He's part of council. He can introduce a resolution. He can be the motion. He can be the second. He can vote. And number 3, the mayor is the chief executive and appoints a BA to assist and run the Department of Administration. But the mayor is the chief executive. He can delegate what he can delegate from the statute to a BA. In a council manager form of government, the council appoints a manager, and that's the chief executive. And it's a council appointment. So these two I highlighted. So the BA, it's a 4-year term concurrent with mayor.
Mhm.
It can be removed by a 2/3 vote. So that's a huge difference. And I want to talk about these two highlighted. You know what? I think I have another slide on that. So I'm gonna hold that because we'll go on the next slide. So line 4, in this form of government, the BA, it's a 4-year term and it runs concurrent with the mayor. So if the mayor doesn't get reelected, the term is over, right? So you know where I'm going with that. Number 4, in this form of government, the manager's term is indefinite. He serves, or she serves, at the pleasure of the governing body until they take a majority vote to get rid of him. In number 5, the BA can be removed by a 2/3 vote in this form of government. That's 2/3 of council, not including the mayor. In this form of government, the manager can be removed by only a majority vote of council, which includes the mayor. And finally, an elected official, in this case, the mayor, is responsible for day-to-day operations. In this form of government, an appointed, supposed to be nonpartisan professional manager is responsible for day-to-day operations, not an elected official. So that's a difference. Now I want to zone in on those highlighted issues, and I want to give you a little bit of color and opinion from working in both of those governments, both of those forms. Obviously, I talk about responsiveness and loyalty. Of course, a BA in the mayor council, he's appointed by the mayor, confirmed, has to be advice and consent, confirmed by council. But the fact that the term is concurrent with the mayor, like there's an inherent bias there. Like the BA knows that if the mayor doesn't get reelected, he's not going to be the BA anymore. If the mayor doesn't get reelected, his term's over. So on those rare occasions when he has to give, business advice, unbiased business advice, if it's going to harm the mayor, sometimes I wonder, can he or she really give that advice if it's going to hurt the mayor? So I feel like there's a bias towards favoring the mayor in that form of government. And I see it. And not only did I feel it, I see it when I am a state monitor in those towns. I don't see that in council manager. When I was the manager and when I work as the monitor, the manager serves the council. So there were many times, whether it was the skateboard park or whether it was a road paving list, when I would give an opinion, and I knew, because obviously I know my elected officials, I had private meetings with them, I know their personal feelings. I knew when I was saying something that was good for the town, but not good for the mayor. But I felt more comfortable saying it because I worked for the whole council. And I felt like I could give, my business advice, and then council can do with it what they want it. And sometimes it made one council member happy and another council member unhappy, but then it would flip-flop. I just felt more unencumbered to give business advice there. And over here, when I knew my term was concurrent with the mayor, it's harder to do that. And I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but hopefully that came across in my word salad.
Yes. But in this case, the manager would have basically 5, 7, or 9 bosses in the council manager form of government. Whereas in mayor council, the BA would say, well, I'm really truly responsible to the mayor, even though I can get removed by members of council. But yes, I see the difference.
Right. Yeah, in Evesham, we had a 5-member council, and I worked for the council. And I would tell the mayor ahead of time, Mayor, if you ask me this question from the dais, this is going to be my answer. So you can ask me if you want, but this is going to be the answer. Like that was a lot harder to do over here.
Yes.
I have a question. Is the in either form, can the council put restrictions on who the manager can be? Meaning, restricting based on educational qualifications or residency requirements?
Residency, I don't think so, but certainly yes to all the other things. Education requirements, experience. I don't know if you can restrict the person to live in a certain area. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. But in a board form of government, you could theoretically.
I don't even know if that's enforceable, to be honest, but I don't practice law. I leave that up to Mike.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
And just to piggyback on that too, unless Collins wants to answer.
I was having trouble following. So what's the hypothetical?
The hypothetical is if you can you restrict a manager to live in town?
Oh, residency requirement?
A residency.
I do believe the statute allows for a resident. You're asking a mayor council?
Either.
Either.
I will double check, but I do believe it's permissible.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I don't know what the statute says. Mike can certainly answer that, but I went for an interview in Galloway Township to be the township manager, and I was number one on the list. And like I called for a second interview and they wanted to hire me, and the mayor asked me that question. We don't have a residency requirement, but I want your word that you're going to move in town. And I couldn't give her that. I said, I can't give you my word that I'm going to move in town, and I didn't get the job. So, but I don't know what the statute says. Mike can follow up on that. Because
is there any,
where it gets sticky in my experience is you can do that to require somebody to get the job. But once they get the job, if 6 months later they move out of town, I don't know if you can fire that person because they moved out of town. I don't know. Mike can follow up on that. That's where it gets hairy.
Yeah, the question is
Okay,
more.
to answer your question, I do have an answer, guys.
Yeah.
In either form of government, the individual can be appointed while not living in the municipality, but presumably to move to the municipality. If they are to live outside the municipality, they require the consent of council, not the mayor, the council, in both forms of government.
But the larger answer to your question is yes, they set all of the requirements. The statute gives them wide latitude to set 5 years experience, master's degree, whatever you want to require. And if you just peruse the League of Municipalities website under the employment section of the League of Municipalities, you'll see the ads there, and they're all pretty standard. Okay, I feel like I'm going fast, but we can.
Well, I do have a question then on the last section, because I see your, this is Commissioner Bennett.
Yep, go ahead.
So Ed, is there a value, and a council manager, more of a council manager question, I guess, because I guess is there more of an evaluation process? I mean, one of the things I like on the Board of Ed is that, every year we do an evaluation of the superintendent. I think we can even do 2, but we have a process. We, answer questions. We have a back and forth. It happens obviously in executive session. We do it in writing, and we get input from being board members and being in the community. Is that the way the council manager works, where there's a process, or is it, what's your experience been?
My experience has been that the statute does not require that to happen. But my experience in Evesham and in the other places I was in, I did get a performance evaluation. It was once a year. It was an executive session. Some of the governing bodies did it orally because they didn't want anything in writing. Some of them did it in writing, but once a year, I would go into an executive session and they would discuss what they liked that I was doing. They would give me a review and also decide if I was going to get a pay increase or not a pay increase. So, yes. And as I said, any manager worth their weight in salt knows that ahead of time. Like if I keep my bosses happy, I have a better chance of keeping my job and getting an increase. If I piss them all off, I'm not going to get an increase, and I'm probably not going to be working here very long. So yes, I did. But that's locally, that's totally up to the local jurisdiction, whether and how they want to do that. The point that I would make there is sometimes you'll see, oh, well, just give the manager the same increment that the unions got. Well, since the manager negotiates the contracts with the unions, I didn't like that because I feel like I don't, you give me what you want to give me, and then I'll get the best deal for the taxpayers I can get with the unions. I don't want my stuff tied to them. So that's why I actually wanted a performance review. I wanted to tell me, what do you think? What am I doing that you like? And what am I doing that you would like me to do better?
So this falls into the category, as you said earlier, you got to make sure to elect people who know what they're doing and who are going to pay attention to the job. Because obviously evaluating, supervising, setting goals, making sure there's follow through is, what you should do if you're supervising an employee. And basically the council, in a council manager form of government, supervises your BA or whatever they call it in that form.
The supervisor.
You don't want to do I would guess it's not really a smart idea to sort of make it up as you go along.
Correct.
No, absolutely not. No, it's a professional operation. I mean, when I was the manager in Evesham, I had monthly department head meetings, and they always came right after a council meeting. Council meetings were every 2 weeks, but once a month we had a department meeting. I would invite council people to the meeting. I just asked them to not participate, to just sit in the back and observe, but they're welcome to come. And I would then have a department head meeting, and I would say, we had a council meeting. This is what the council wants to happen. We're having a 4th of July parade. The park has to look nice. We're blah, 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 blah. And I would kind of go over all those issues. This is what's important. This is what we're working on this month. Get everybody pointed in the right direction, allocate resources, and yes, absolutely, you have to do those things. And if I'm allocating and steering and them in the wrong direction, I expect council to say, Ed, why are you spending all this time on drainage basins? We want the park spruced up. We want basketball courts and tennis courts and, synthetic turf field. So yes, you have to have all those things. That's why hiring an experienced manager who knows how to do that, take the policy objectives of the elected officials and turn them into reality, is a skill. And that's why you need somebody who can do that.
Right.
Thank you.
I have a general question about the role of the manager or any administrator. In corporate roles, there's an appraisal system for employees, like department heads and rank and file, there's an annual review. In your experience as an administrator, did you conduct that for the folks who worked under you?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I'm not sure in government you can do that or not. I was just
No,
curious.
it's locally imposed. It depends if you're civil service or not civil service. I don't know if Red Bank is a civil service community. And it also depends, you have to follow your union contracts. Usually the department heads are not union, so I wasn't encumbered by that, and we weren't civil service. So yes, I would call them in once a year, just like the council did to me. And I would tell them, I would give them a review and also discuss their increment of what, whether they were going to, I would want to see their succession plan. What happens if you retire, if you quit, if you take another job, what's your succession plan? Do we have somebody trained? Is your deputy trained? Can he step up? If you go out sick, if you get COVID and you're out, can this person run the public works department? Can we do a snow removal plan? Obviously you have to do all those things.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
I used to tell the staff, and it hasn't changed much, that there's 2 things that have to happen every day before we do anything. If somebody dials 911, somebody's got to show up at the house, either fire, police, ambulance, whatever the 911 call, we got to show up. And the trash has to be picked up. Like, that has to happen every day. So there was a bunch of core things we had to do. We got to collect taxes. So number 1, revenue. We got to have the window has to be open. We got to collect. So yes, of course, you got to be doing all those things at the same time. And that's why you can't have council people with a singular objective going to a department head and pulling them away from the things that the manager has them working on, which hopefully are based on policies that the council as a body enacted. That's why the statute is set up that way. It's not that they want to cut out the council people. You're the most powerful people in the community because you're elected to serve, and you can take out the manager at any meeting. Sorry, I got off on a rant. I apologize.
No, but that's actually very good information. I do appreciate it.
So as far as the next steps, if the commission decides to recommend a change, and you don't have to, if you decide to recommend a change, you can, I left mayor, council, administrator off of here, but you can scroll back up to the beginning and look at those slides if that is something you're interested in. But if you want, the most common one that Faulkner Act towns switch to is the mayor, council, or council manager. So as far as your next steps, if you're deciding to look at one of these, then you also have to look at these sub areas. Do you want it to be partisan or nonpartisan, staggered or concurrent, at large or wards? If wards, how many? What's the size of your council? And in the council manager form only, do you want the mayor to be directly elected or appointed? So that's kind of, I put that in there, kind of a jump off slide for your next meeting, is to talk about make that decision if you're going to advocate for a change and how much change. And that's it. That's my questions. And then I'll field any questions you guys have.
Okay, thank you so much. Does anybody else have questions? Kate? She always has good questions.
I have some, like, I don't know, they're kind of amorphous questions, but I'm thinking a lot about responses we've had locally to the question of form versus who's elected, right? And you had made mention of that earlier, right? Like, we get the government we deserve, right? And I think a lot about how I got involved and how a number of people that I know in town get involved, and it's because they get involved with an issue, right? We want bike lanes in town, or we want to fix an open space, or, you know, et cetera. And so it's generally, they're brought to this service, not by deep civics knowledge, but by concern with a particular issue. And one thing I'm having a hard time finding in research about, you know, certain municipalities and their adoption of different forms of government is like, what provides the best incubator for resident involvement and maintaining resident involvement, whether that's, you know, vision and creation of things, you know, after we've met the efficacy foundations, right? After we do garbage, taxes, right? Open up the tax window, those basic things. Like,
Right.
then how do we level up the government? And does that just come from an exceptionally visioned group of people that are elected, or are there structures in place statutorily inside of one of these forms that enable that to happen with confidence?
I understand the question. So there's nothing statutorily. The system relies on a campaign, an election, but even after the folks are elected, like you said, maybe they got elected because of a single issue, which happens lots of times. Some of the techniques that I've seen, and again, they're not statutory, but some of the techniques I've seen, I worked for I'm going to say progressive township, not in a political sense, progressive governing body in Hamilton Township, and they took their governing body meetings on the road. They didn't have wards, but they would have a public meeting, you know, in a different part of town, at a local community center, at they wouldn't do it at a church, but they would do it at a firehouse, or a community center, or a senior center around town, to try to get different groups of people. And that was surprisingly effective. So that was one way. The other thing is, we would, through now with websites and internet and ideas, like you know, you used to have the old put your card in the box. If you have an idea, put it in the box. We had a program at Evesham that if somebody gave us an idea and we used it, they got a monetary reward, or they got a gift certificate to go to a movie theater or something. So I've seen all kinds of like creative ideas that were all locally generated. But most of the time, it's people coming to the microphone at a public meeting, or just writing their elected official and saying, you know, this is a concern in my neighborhood. Could you please look into it? And normally that's where the majority of it comes from.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions for Ed?
Yeah, I do, Chair. So Ed, I think one of the chief things that every one of us has taken from the past number of meetings is that we have a form of government that is broken down, not because the form of government doesn't work, but the people don't make it work. For a variety of reasons, not pointing any blame or whatever. Is there a specific form of government that you like, that basically says, hey, look, regardless whether the people get along, this form of government continues to work? And, you know, for many years we've had, I mean, for over 100 years, Red Bank has had the borough form of government, right?
Yes.
And at some point in time, it stopped working, either because people didn't stay in their lanes, or the powers of the respective offices weren't protected. So I think one of the things that we're trying to achieve here is that regardless if people don't get along, the government has to still work. And so of these that you see here, the various changes are,
Yeah.
you know, do you have a preference, or in your experience where I'm sure you've seen people not getting along and the government still worked?
We broke up fistfights in Atlantic City at the council meetings.
Right. Well, I'm not quite sure if that's a good example that it worked, just because Atlantic City is still under supervision of the state. So
Right, exactly.
I'm not quite sure if that would be a great example.
No.
But in municipalities that are the size of Red Bank, do you have, or have you seen a preference?
Right. So the first thing I want to say, I'm going to answer your question, but the first thing I want to say is 218 municipalities use the borough form of government. So I'm not going to say that it doesn't work and it can't work. It can work. It's the most common form of government in New Jersey. So it can work, and it does work in lots of places. My personal preference, I'm partial, and I'm biased, but I'm partial to council manager. Maybe it was because the type of community it was, maybe it was the elected officials, maybe it was a combination. But when I was in Evesham, which is in Burlington County, if you Google that, it's usually one of the top 10 places to live in South Jersey. It's a beautiful community. It's well run, it's well managed. And, I don't know if that's just because it was council manager, but the council set the policy. They made the big, broad decisions. They let the manager and the department staff, they hired a good manager and made sure that, and it worked fine there. And that was what I was partial to, and it works fine in Asbury Park. Asbury Park is was the #1 shore town in whatever magazine it was. They have a council manager form of government. I mean, maybe you talk to Mayor Moore or some of those folks. I worked in Asbury Park, great run, professionally run town, very financially stable, AA bond rating. So that's just my bias. I like council manager, but there's other forms that work just fine and can work fine.
Thank you.
So a variation on Commissioner DuPont's question, from more of the point of view of politics and meddling. Like, let's say you have a dysfunctional, hypothetically, you have a dysfunctional people elected who are not getting along or able to work together. I'm concerned about employees and providing services and not having conflicting instructions, and person A wants person B to do this, but don't tell, person B, and various assorted dysfunctionality among the governing body. Which form of government provides the best protection for employees to focus on doing the job, to continue to provide services, and yet, have proper accountability and staying focused on the mission of whatever it is, whether it's collecting taxes, running a senior center, fixing the roads, fixing, drainage.
Both of these forms, there's a reason why the legislature put that language in both of these forms, where the legislator is not permitted by statute to interfere with employees. It's in both of these. So to be completely unbiased, that shouldn't happen in either one of these forms of government. It'll happen less in the council manager form of government, just by the nature of the beast, but they're not supposed to do it in either one. And I'll tell you another reason why it happens. And this, you won't find this in a statute or probably in a textbook. In the council manager form of government, and I mean no disrespect to any elected official who's listening to this, but the elected officials always want somebody to blame. If there's a boil water advisory, if a road didn't get plowed, something, and people come to a meeting, it's very easy for them to say, that's by statute, that's the manager's responsibility. They'll be glad to meet with you tomorrow morning and talk to you about it and get all your information. Like they have a built-in statutory excuse that we're not allowed to interfere. And that gets said a lot. We're not allowed to interfere, but we certainly want the manager to be responsive to that. They'll meet with you. And so that was something that the elected officials got used to. They like that, having that insulation.
But they do remain accountable. I mean, like, if something is not being done, I guess one of the things I hear in Red Bank a lot is, we want to, I'm paraphrasing, we want to meddle, so that, employee X does, their job. I mean, is there some advantage to that? Or, Is it better really to have the professional manager or whatever, I don't know, having a chain of command manage its situation?
I love that term, chain of command, because that's exactly what we had. And we had an organizational chart, and it was on the office wall of every department. Like I was a military officer, we had an org chart, and we had it for a reason, because I would drill down with the council to get what their issue is. You know, like you guys have just rattled off 10 priorities that you want me to work on. Give me the what is the order? You want a football field, you want 2 more soccer fields, you want the road paving program. Tell me what you want and I'll make it happen. And then I'll go and do that. So, but when I'm doing that, you can't go complain to me or run around to another employee and have them go work on something else, because as a body, you just gave me the priorities. So it's incumbent on the manager and the elected officials to communicate what they want the administrative force to be working on. And it seems to me that happens easier in council manager. Of course, it happens here also. But what happens here in mayor council, which a lot of towns have it and it works fine. The mayor is directing the BA to do things. Sometimes what the mayor is directing the BA to do isn't necessarily what the council wants done, but he's doing it. The mayor is giving him or her marching orders. And then council gets angry and council brings it up at the council meeting. We have to talk to the mayor. We want a meeting with the mayor because why are they spending time on this park when we wanted them to spend time on other park? But by statute, the mayor is the head of the executive branch. But that doesn't happen in council manager because the council gives as a whole, as a body, gives the direction to the manager.
Well, thank you.
There's subtle differences, but they're there.
Thank you. See, a big concern I have is I don't want employees, I think it's unfair to have 6 bosses or 7 if you count the mayor. It just seems impossible.
And
anyway, thank you very much.
If you pick one of these 2 forms, statutorily, that can't happen.
Right. So those 2 forms provide the guardrails to protect employees more so than mayor, council, admin, or the board form of government.
Yeah, well, I don't like the term protect employees. I don't like that term, but I understand what you mean. The way I would say it protects the integrity of the system. The voters voted for the elected officials. The elected officials make policy. It's up to the manager or the BA to make sure that policy gets carried out. And not just the interest of one individual, but what the body wants. That's so I like that it protects the integrity of the process. Look, employees are you're always going to have recalcitrant employees. I'm always going to ask employees to do something they don't like, and they're going to go complain to an elected official. It's the nature of the beast. Their kids play soccer together. They're in the Knights of Columbus together, and they're going to say, "Oh, can you believe what the manager's got me doing? He's got me, cleaning out drainage basins." Yeah, you're right. The manager does have them cleaning out drainage basins because it's got to get done. So that's going to happen, but that's different than directing the workforce. They can communicate, but that's not directing the workforce.
Can I switch gears a little bit? Within the council manager, you mentioned that the mayor is part of the legislative body. So other than the title of mayor, there's no distinction between the mayor and the council person sitting next to him, correct?
Well, there are some statutory appointments that the mayor will make.
Okay.
Yeah, there are some. If the statute says the mayor appoints a planning board member, the mayor appoints a economic development council, yes, there are a few times that occurs.
Okay, but again, that's still with advice and consent of the council?
Not all the time. Not all the time. Not all the time. But most of the time, yes. But there's a few examples where the mayor gets an appointment.
Okay, so then in your experience, I guess what I'm trying to get at is direct election or appointment by the body.
Yeah.
In your experience, did you ever work with either or both or one? Do you have a preference for one version of that?
I have a preference for a directly elected mayor. I worked in both, and you guys are closer to Asbury Park than I am, but Asbury Park started their council manager with the mayor being appointed by council, and then they changed that and had the mayor directly elected by the people. And when I was in Evesham, the mayor was directly elected by the people. And I think that works better. And you know, I just think it works better, but I'm sure there's places where it's appointed and it works okay. I also feel like the mayor has a little bit more respect of his colleagues when he's directly elected. You know, it's hard to win a mayoral election and it takes a lot of work, and you got to get people to vote for you. And there's a certain amount of prestige that goes with getting elected as mayor, and both, whether it's Asbury Park or Evesham, you know, the people did defer to the mayor on lots of issues. But to your point, as far as authority, the mayor had the same authority. His vote counted once. It's the same.
Yeah, it's still one person, one vote. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
But there are certain duties or privileges assigned to the mayor specifically as far as appointments. Or
Not often, but as your attorney said earlier, one example that jumps out of my head for the land use law says the mayor can put a designee on the planning board. So that doesn't need to be confirmed. He can just pick somebody and they're on the planning board. I think that's also true with economic development councils. I think he might get an appointment on a historic or recreation commission, those kind of things. But for the, what I'll call the nuts and bolts of the operations of government, he's got one vote and it requires council confirmation.
I agree. Thank you.
And so the most important thing a council does in the council manager form of government is hire the manager. That's what they need. They need to be on the same page. Like that's the most important thing they do is hire the manager, and to Commissioner Forrest's point, supervise the manager. You don't just appoint the manager and then wash your hands. You got to have review. You got to make sure the manager knows what your priorities are and that he's working or she is working on the things that you want them working on and marshaling the resources. So it's a lot of information. It's a big responsibility, changing your form of government. So you guys have, at least, hopefully you have a little bit, maybe, and we'll leave this with your chairman and your secretary. So hopefully you can refer back to this. And if you have other questions that come up along the way, just email them to me or call me and I'll be glad to try to help you.
Okay. Well, Ed, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to come and speak with us and share the presentation. I also like the fact that you sort of laid out a roadmap for us about the different aspects of the 3 forms of government to look at, you know, partisan, nonpartisan, number of terms, staggered or concurrent. And I think that could help set us over through the next couple of meetings. So I do appreciate that. So again, thank you on behalf of all of council.
All right, you're quite welcome. You guys need me for anything else?
No, and I know where to find you if we need you.
All right, I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna leave and then you can talk about me.
Sure.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed that presentation, and I do like the way how Ed broke everything out to make us clearly see the differences, you know, at a high level. So I think that's really good. And
That would be, you know, Chair, that would be a nice diagram or a document to put on the website to clear up any issues that residents have.
yes, that's what I usually do when you get presentations. There's, I think under resources or agendas, minutes, I put it up there, but if you want to put it on the main page, let me know and I can take care of that for you, for all of us. So I think that would be great. Next we have on the agenda is the update from the Charter Commission attorney. But before I go into that, I wondered how you all felt that if we broke up the different aspects to look at of these forms of government into the next few meetings. So what I was thinking is that we could have like our next meeting, we can focus on partisan, nonpartisan, and possibly the meeting after that, it would be the number of member of councils and terms and whether it's staggered or concurrent. And then the follow up would be at large or wards. So I think that could be like next 2 or 3 meetings. What do you think about that? Can we have do you want me to present a motion, Mike? Do I have to do that?
We could certainly do that after there's a discussion.
Okay.
that approach.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to address the different options under these different, since there's really, I mean, there's two, really, I mean, there's three options available to us, really two that we need to drill down on. Maybe that first discussion is partisan, nonpartisan, and something else. We can probably do two topics or, in a given meeting. Otherwise, they might be really quick. And I'd love to hear the public's input on those particular topics. So as long as we have enough time to properly discuss them, one or two of these, subtopics would be fine for a meeting
Okay.
for me.
Right. And I believe at our next meeting, we're going to have a speaker, a professor from Rutgers that's going to talk a little bit about elections. So it sort of makes sense that we would have partisan, nonpartisan at that time. You okay with that, Mark? Okay. Anybody else?
Well,
I don't think it's a bad idea. I just think that there's got to be a little more substance to it, because I don't think some of these discussions or categories are going to take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that if you add some of the criteria together in one meeting, rather than 4 or 5, I think you might be able to make a substantive effort, by giving each meeting 2 or 3 criteria versus just one.
Sure.
I would just say I agree completely with Commissioner DuPont, and if we don't make any firm decisions tonight, I'd be happy to look through the different permutations and try to come up with a way of combining them. It certainly sounded like wards may be disposed of fairly quickly. Some of the others might be as well, while I would imagine partisan, nonpartisan may take a full meeting.
Yes, Ben?
So at some point, and maybe this is already in the on your plan, that's almost, I know there's a flow chart, a nicely done flow chart. But I like, maybe we should have some specific dates of decision, or like we vote and make motions on yes, no on some of these things. That's all.
Okay. I think that's
I would
good.
just say that certainly the commission can, as commissioners, you could articulate your position on an individual thing, but the only real action that the commission will take at the end of the day is adopting the final report. So I don't, we can informally set forth views if that's the desire, but I don't want anyone to think that that's going to box us into, saying a specific thing in the final report. From a legal standpoint, everything is going to remain open-ended until that ultimate vote is taken.
So the final report would contain our recommendations, right? Correct?
Exactly. So yeah, that's kind of fast forwarding to phase 3 a little bit, but it's probably not a bad time for us to talk about it. So under the statute, the commission will be, after we get through phase 2 and you start to have direction on which way you're thinking of going, you'll be putting together and I'll obviously be working with you closely. We'll be getting a report together. I would envision, a pretty substantial summary of all the work that the commission's done through all the meetings we've had, and, the different policy considerations that have been weighed, and explaining to the residents of Red Bank how you reach the ultimate conclusion you reach. So as part of that process, I've actually been opering reports from other municipalities, and I actually have a list here because I keep track, since some of the towns respond quickly and some don't. But there are about a dozen municipalities that have done charter commission reports over the past 2 decades, and so I'm trying to get copies of as many of those as I can. And once I have a good number, I'll be sure to share that with everyone. And you may also want to review those to give you some food for thought as we go through the move towards the writing process.
Sure. That'll be great. Okay. Do we want to move on to the updates from the Charter Commission attorney, since you started talking?
Certainly, Chair and Commissioners, good evening to everyone. Like the Chair mentioned, at the next meeting, we have Professor Rubin from Rutgers Eagleton lined up to speak. I had a nice conversation with her a couple weeks ago. She's done a substantial amount of research on the effect of the party line in partisan elections here in New Jersey, and the advantages or disadvantages that candidates have based upon the use of the line. So she was previously invited and will be attending the next meeting. So like the chair indicated, it may be part and parcel with that if you wanted to have a discussion on partisan, nonpartisan, because she'll be providing some academic background on that. Beyond that, I don't have any other speakers lined up, but I'm certainly happy to take direction from the commission. And if there's any specific speakers or classes of individuals that you're looking to hear from as part of phase 2, we could certainly work on getting those lined up.
Would it make sense to have our party chairs come and speak to us to tell us, how it works in their elections, in the election of who they bring forth to the committees or to within the party, and how they work with the elective process?
I don't think that,
Just-
I don't think that's appropriate for our committee.
Okay,
Our committee has got, a phase 1 and phase 2, and there's a couple phases on it. I don't really care what the party chairs have an opportunity to say. We had an opportunity to speak to one of the party chairs recently. I don't know if the other Republican Party chair was invited, but I think that right now we're in phase 2 in terms of obtaining which is, or deciding which is the best form of government.
okay.
The only reason to do it would be to add some color to the partisan, nonpartisan conversation. I think the 5 of us certainly have a good grasp on how partisan politics affects us locally. I might be interested in hearing from some representatives from other towns who have nonpartisan, have been serving in a nonpartisan or elected in a nonpartisan form of government, and hearing how that has, affected election turnout, things like that, just to give the other side some meat.
Well, I'm sure. I'm sorry, Mark.
No, I was just gonna wrap up. I just said I think it would be good to balance the equation. I think we've heard a lot about the partisan side of things, and we've all experienced it living here. From Red Bank's perspective, I'd like to hear how other towns have, experienced, how their experience with nonpartisan has been.
Well, I think maybe the witness from Rutgers might be able to proffer some opinions on partisan versus nonpartisan.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to her presentation for that reason.
I was, I don't know if I'm recognized.
Yeah, you are.
Okay. I was satisfied with Chairman Edward Ziprich's. I mean, I asked him questions. I know some of you do it too on that topic. And he was very generous coming here, and I think he was very direct with us, and, and we were direct with him. And I think there's no point in, redoing that. And it's just my own feedback there. I mean, I don't know the Republican chairman very well. I mean, if he felt very inclined to come or write to us, that's fine, or talk to us. I'm always interested in hearing other points of view. Your discretion, Chairwoman, but I don't see any need to call Chairman Zip back and Councilman Edward Ziprich back.
Okay.
Chair,
Yes, okay.
I just thinking about Commissioner Taylor's point about someone from a nonpartisan town. One of the concerns that have been raised with me by constituents, and certainly I come across in some of the concerns locally, are about representation, right? And that was part of my question about wards earlier, and also like how we increase interest, and so I think there's some conversation about increasing interest by, reducing barriers to who can run for office, for sure. But I'm very interested in hearing, I know we can all read about Asbury Park, but I'm interested in the idea of representation versus who their, the demographic in town is, and looking at some of these questions. So I don't know if there's, which nonpartisan towns are sort of best to ask or meet that list, but I'd like that to be a consideration.
You might be a good invitation to do is Amy Quinn.
Right. I also,
Asbury Park.
yes. I also I made up a list some time ago of municipalities that had council manager or mayor council that were similar to us and somewhat to a certain degree of population size. And I'll be happy to share that list. And Asbury Park is on there. I have like Cedar Grove, Asbury Park, Montclair, Ringwood, Howell, because Howell has partisan elections, but they are a council manager type of government. And then under mayor council, there's Long Branch, Tinton Falls, Clark, and Robbinsville. And I'll be happy to share that. And maybe we can arrange to have them come and talk with us about their government. I think that's a great idea. Yes. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is the assignment of work, next meeting actions. I guess we, just finish wrapping up your reports with your interviews with the board employees as you're doing them, and send your updates to Mike when you're completed. And I guess we just take our next steps over there again after we meet with Julia for our next meeting. Does anybody have any remarks, anything they want to add or say?
Chair, just briefly, I want to I don't know who's watching, at large tonight, but I certainly appreciate email communication from residents in town. And I want to implore people to continue to, if they, can't come to watch the recorded videos, and please, weigh in, please share your communications with us through our borough email.
Thank you. Yes, I do appreciate that. Ben?
Ditto what Kate said, but I also would like to add, if somebody here, if they feel they want to contribute something to us, and testify, to contact you, because a number of people have been, I know about the other commissioners, been directly contacting me. So I tell them to reach out to you, Nancy, as our chair. And actually, I've gotten a lot out of reading the correspondence. We've had some very detailed letters written to us about their views on partisan, nonpartisan, and various assorted other things. And I do appreciate it. I do respond to the ones I've gotten so far. And I just want, people to know that we are reading them. Also, I did miss the last meeting, and I just wanted to mention I did watch the video of the entire meeting. So thank you very much for having it all, on Facebook. And I guess that concludes just the things I wanted to say tonight. Thank you.
Mike or Mark?
I have no comment, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
One more thing I would like to mention is that we did put out a short survey last time for a public comment section, and we have another survey or series of questions that it's going to be put together that will expand into the different characteristics of the alternative forms of government. That's going to be posted to the website shortly, as well as we could share it on Facebook and, share it printed, share it with your neighbors, email us your comments. We do at csc@redbanknj.org, and we all appreciate that because your input is very important to us. And if you're, email in the language you're comfortable with, if you're comfortable reading and writing in Spanish, it's okay. We have a Spanish translator program. If it's in Russian, we do have a Russian on there as well. So, we'll just take your input because we really do want to hear from our residents and what they would like to see in the form of government. So that's all I have. At this time, we have a motion. Can we have a motion to open up to public comment? Oh,
I'll make
somebody-
such a motion.
I'll
Okay.
second.
All right, so time for public comment. Bonnie, can you manage that?
Sorry. First we have up is Sue Viscomi.
Okay,
Go ahead, Sue.
Suzanne Viscomi, 25 Cedar Street. Sorry I missed the last meeting. I was with Ben at the school board meeting. So I am going back a little bit, but I do want to make this comment. Last, I guess 2 meetings ago, I had a question, and a former commissioner spoke about the importance of political ideology. So I guess my question is, how is ideology not like prejudging? If you're basing people on their political party via ideology, couldn't you say you're prejudging me? Like, are you going to prejudge me because of my party? Wouldn't you also turn that around and say, well, you could prejudge me because I'm Hispanic. You could prejudge me because I'm gay. And I believe we all don't want to prejudge each other, right? We want to know each other and be open. In my opinion, sorry, my dog. In my opinion, there's three factors to all this. Number one, the reason why people run for office, why they stick their neck out there, is it to promote their professional goals? Is it to gain power, to get money, or to really truly step up for your town, your state, or whatever group you're running for? Number two, the type of government, everyone's talking about people staying in their own lanes. And I agree, people should be adult enough to stay in their own lanes and be professional. Being a school board member and a library trustee, I'm encouraged to go to the school. I'm encouraged to go to the library. I'm encouraged to go to events and go walk around and talk to people. I'm encouraged to see all the great things that are happening in both avenues. So I don't like that council members are not encouraged to speak and talk, because I know, Chairwoman, you work with the DPW, right? So if you could work with the DPW and you're an adult to work with them, wouldn't council members, you would hope, also be adult enough to be able to walk through and just say hi to people? Thanks for doing a good job. Thanks for taking care of that for my neighbors. Thank you for doing an extra step, for making our town look great and picking up the trash and doing your job. Number three, there is responsibility on voters. Voters, a lot of people are saying they're not being heard. I agree and disagree. Sometimes you got to keep knocking on the doors. You got to keep yelling. You got to keep speaking up to be heard. People do feel ignored. I know, past business administrator, I think people were scared and not really. As the current administrator, he's been so open and easy to talk to. Where in the past, people were intimidated. I mean, there was times when people on the dais were laughing and talking while people were trying to speak publicly and bring up issues and concerns, and yet people on the dais were literally laughing. I have numerous videos of this. It's sad because we're supposed to be working together. Voters should not worry about party on a local level. We do not, and I've said this many times, we do not have a Republican sidewalk or a Democratic bench. We are neighbors. We should win together when our football teams win together. We should come together when someone, unfortunately, their house comes on fire. We are neighbors first and foremost. With that being said, I think the form of government for this town is only one piece of the pie. I've worked with one of your commissioners there, and he thought he heard me say something racist. When did we stop being an adults? And before he called me out publicly and calls me a racist, and have other people, prominent people in town like Boris Kaufman and Frank Corrado also writing on Facebook and calling me a racist, I stuttered. I stuttered because I was so upset and dumbfounded that the business administrator was so disrespectful to the prior person that I stuttered. Again, we need to be adults. We need to pause and talk to each other. But this is where we're coming down to. So let's stop prejudging people on ideology. Let's meet somebody. Let's not look at fancy handouts or fancy buzzwords. Actions speak louder than words. And I think the combination of what's going on in this town and where we are, it's not just a Band-Aid on the form of government. It's not just every other council member saying, we're going to be an adult. We're going to be adult. We're going to go high and let everyone go low. Stop it. Actions speak louder than words. And I think this is a first step to it all. But we all got to, stop the nonsense, grow up and be an adult. So I really wish I could see you at the last meeting. And I thank you for your time tonight.
Oh, no, thank you very much for your input, Sue. I appreciate it. And if you want to write anything and send to us, csc@redbanknj.org.
No,
Because
I'd
I know
rather have
you wanted
everything
to
public,
speak. I
because
do
I wish-
remember that you had joined the meeting just after we closed public comment, and I was ready to open it again, and then you disappeared. So I was trying to catch you, but I think you left before I could get to you. So I apologize for that.
No, I saw you close it. I didn't want to, I knew my turn, I missed it. So I respect the rules. And I thank you, but I like speaking publicly because it's great that some people want to ask questions privately, but I think, you know what, being open, other people might bounce on ideas that other people say. So I think speaking publicly and not having my words misread or something, rather, speak than write. Thank you.
Okay, yes, great. Thank you very much. Who's
Next we have either Barbara Boas or Stephen Hecht.
I think I saw Barbara's hand go up first, or Stephen Hecht, right? Yes. Okay, yes. Okay. Here we go.
Sorry.
Stephen Hecht, 135 Branch Avenue. As the commission moves forward, I hope that you will be able to hear some testimony from people in municipalities that have chosen each of the two forms of government that you will be focusing on. And I hope also, if there are any, that you will be able to hear from municipalities that offered the opportunity to change and did not. I'd like to complete the circle if there are any such municipalities that rejected the change. That's what I wanted to say, other than thank you again for the hard work. And it gets more and more interesting every meeting. And I certainly want my fellow residents to be here, to speak up or to write up, whichever is best. And thank you.
Thank you for that, Stephen. I've added it to the list of municipalities, and I guess I'll work with our commission attorney or Ed Sasdelli to see where we can find information with municipalities that have had charter studies done and then did not change their government. Yes, definitely. Thank you.
And next is Dan Reardon. Go ahead, Dan.
Dan Reardon, you have the floor.
There, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Little microphone issue. Maybe you already covered this. Right? Maybe it was part of what you said, but I would really like to hear from party chairs of nonpartisan towns. I think you were talking about inviting council members from those towns, but I'd really like to hear what the party chairs from one or two nonpartisan towns have to say about how the party functions and how they think nonpartisan government functions for them. So, and that was all I wanted to say, other than thanks. This was a really good session. Phase 2, yay.
Phase 2, baby.
All right, bye.
Thank you very much for that that input, Dan. I've added it to the list and we will try to make it happen. So I appreciate this. And thank you for joining our session. Okay. Is there anyone else?
That is all.
No? Okay. Is there a motion to close public comment?
I'll make a motion and we close public comment.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Okay, great. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
So
move.
moved.
Second.
Good. All in favor?
Bye.
Bye.
Well, thank you very much for your input and your service to our community. Have a good night.
You too. Good night, all.
Night.
All right.